Alright, let's go ahead and see if we are currently live. Just gonna go ahead and start winging things. Alright, cool. So we are here at Let's Make a Game series. We're currently making DodgeKing Deluxe, which is going to be an intended sequel to DodgeKing, which is a video game I made a year and a half ago. Definitely learned a lot of lessons as a game designer. At first I kind of winged it. I tried to make the game as quickly as possible by saying, hey, what if I took 3 months of nothing but full focus and prototyped, masked, and then make a whole game out of it, right? And I was privileged to do this because I had literally all the time in the world. Not necessarily, but definitely learned that you can make an entire video game relatively quickly. And I kind of wanted to leverage that experience with the fact that, hey, can I do it again? But actually make a good game, right? I don't think DodgeKing is a bad game as a whole, but definitely there were a lot of mistakes that I made as a developer. And today we are going to continue making progress to DodgeKing Deluxe while essentially not making those same mistakes, right? So we're going to start off with what are we going to do with the stream? Well, last stream we dealt with projectiles, right? We had some basic collider stuff, basic HP systems that didn't get transferred. We had a not the most optimal, but a very bare bones, hey, this is how bullets move system. We do have part of the ribbon system, which is basically how our character can jump and dodge and it can get detected that way. We didn't play with spawn points or effects, so that's something that I'll look into later. But these are what we call game feel stuff, which arguably is hypercritical, hyper important, something that 100% you should focus on, right? But for prototyping purposes, we'll definitely have to revisit this later. Object pooling is another thing that we were talking about, which is, hey, how do we have the ability to spawn the same bullet over and over so that the game doesn't have any like memory overload? Honestly, I think it's just more effective to focus on these right now, and then we can continue seeing what else we have to deal with objective-wise. So let us go ahead and just do a quick test here. Just want to make sure that the game is indeed running. We have an example of a bullet. We have the ability to jump. And what's been logged is, hey, we dodged and we got a dodge point for doing that. We were supposed to get a jump point. And then we are getting affected, right? So these logs are basically just telling us what we want to actually happen. So like later we'll program effects and like actual, oh yeah, this is the thing that happens when you jump or dodge, or when you take hit, or when you take damage, or when you grab a power up. So we're going to be using the log system a lot to just document all of that. I'm getting dodge points here, but I'm not so sure. Okay, now I'm getting a jump point. Yeah, so I want to verify if I actually programmed the jump point correctly, because that was implemented, but for some reason I'm not getting it consistently, and that's a big issue. Yeah, we're not getting jump points. Interesting. Okay, so we were looking at the projectile, which is this. Project should be projectile. Projectile test is this little item here. And when we run, we're gonna have two boxes here. This is the dodge box. This is the jump box. Okay, I think so we can barely see the collider here. But I think the issue is that we are jumping and then it's counting as a dodge because we're getting out of it, right? So what we can do is expand. Yeah, I guess I can move this to 2 and then move this to 1 or 0.5. Yeah, so what this is trying to communicate here, I don't want isometric, I kind of want like a more square view. Okay, so basically, right, What that wireframe is trying to let us know is, hey, once we're in the area, that's the dodge box. And if we leave the dodge box, then we get a dodge point, right? What happens is if you jump over and enter the jump box, which is this part here, you'd get the jump point first, and as a result, you can't get the dodge point because you get jump before dodge, and then that cancels out. That's part of the logic. So I think it's the placement that matters the most here. Because if I said, oh, let me, for example, let me enter the range of where I'm going to, of where I'm gonna like enable the dodge point, but then I jump this area right above like where the actual bullet is. When you jump over, you're gonna register the dodge point first. So what I'm gonna do is let me write this to 0.5. I'm gonna test that. I want to make sure it's like I'm actually hitting the areas that I need to hit. So I should be in range here. And then yeah, it says here jump point earned. So that's what I need to look at. I need to make sure that all of the dodge boxes, they're pretty much the same, they're only rotated differently, so they're all going to be centered by 0.5, and they're going to have a size of 2. If I expand that, kind of looks like what we're looking for. We're going to have to do some tests with the last ones here, because like, okay, if I do, yeah, so this dodge box should probably be negative 0.5, yeah, that makes sense. And then these two dodge boxes are at a completely different plane, so I have to really pay attention to this. I think this is fine, but then this one has the same problem as the last one, so we kind of want to just do negative 0.5. And that should be fair enough. So unless the bullet is like ridiculously fast, or if there's something else that's getting in the way of like, hey, why are you not colliding properly? I think those sizes are rudimentary. Like they should be okay for what we're looking for. So once again, if I get nearby and then I move out, it says you got the dodge point, which is absolutely correct. And then ideally, if I jump over, actually leave, okay, that's another condition I didn't think about, but leaving in that direction causes the dodge point as well. So now, that's interesting. I need to find a test case that allows me to overwrite that. So that's probably going to be, okay, that's more to think about, because I'm thinking, oh, what if you infinitely stretch the box, but yeah, there's the jump point and the hit. I think by nature, this is so, okay, this is rough, because I was going to say by nature, you're not going to try to, I mean, who knows, right? You guys are the players at the end of the day. So I was going to say, if we had like a bullet that goes one way, and then you go the same way as the bullet, that should count as not a dodge, right? Like, yeah, you're technically dodging, but you're not getting the dodge point because you're not completely out of the way. But the game is saying, oh, if you're in that range, then yeah, when you do that, that's exactly what it is. So I wonder if maybe I have an approach, right, where I have, how do I switch this from isometric to, I'm not too sure. Anyway, what if I had an approach where once you get in the range, suddenly like the center and the size kind of like super expand? That's gonna be a lot of manual programming, is what I call it. But then here, like there's no way that you're leaving because you're still gonna be in the range the entire time. So when that happens, you're basically stuck in the area that says, okay, you have to leave this area, right? So all of this new area that's all the way going to the left, you're not gonna leave that because you're basically moving with the new area. It's bigger, and the only way that you exit is if you jump or if you go up and down, which in this case, that would reward you because you're leaving the row in that case. So I'm assuming this, like, I could probably program it so that I change the size of the hitboxes and the center as well to kind of like emulate what I'm doing here as soon as you enter it first. But I just got to make sure that the coordinates, or like the actual hitboxes, respecting the location of the alternate ones. The reason why I'm mentioning that is because, remember, we have two hitboxes that are using negatives, and then we have two others that are using positives. And I don't think that's too difficult to say as a distinction. Like, you can definitely program in that, and that's not a big deal. But you want to make sure that it's correct, right? Look at DodgeBox. So it should be 0.5, and then it should be 2. That might be one of the first things we can program, actually. So let's just open up the project logic v1. And I probably honestly want to do like a DodgeBox hitbox expansion function, right? But we kind of talked about where the DodgeBoxes like would behave, which is, you know, these last functions here. I'm trying to see if there was something else. Yeah, you see DodgeBox configuration. And then I'm also debating, do we even put it here or do we put it in the actual DodgeBox logic, right? Like, there's a sensor, right? The sensor is what's responsible. Okay, so let's take this back. The sensor is going to be what's responsible for, hey, we're touching the player, right? So here we said that dodge boxes were type 0. You see, type of box is 0 while the jump boxes are 1. So let's respect the type box 0, which would be this one. And this one's the exit, right? So then the enter 0. So once we touch the box, and then it's actually the dodge box, we're going to get these functions. But what I could also do is simply do I don't want to call another function. I mean, I could make a function called expand hitbox and then, you know, map it that way. But I think it's important to not call. So from what I understand, and I might have this wrong. Actually, it would be pretty nice if we Google this real quick, but do multiple functions in Unity causes memory usage. This is probably a more, actually look at that, one big script or multiple little ones. Don't think of them as scripts. See them as class objects. Yeah, one big mega script can get large and hard to maintain, very annoying. However, there's a lot of talking to each other. So like, yeah, when you have multiple scripts, right, like they're talking to each other, right? Wouldn't that be considered more usage of memory? So inheritance scripts, for example. I'm just going through this. In my opinion, yeah, singletons are probably the way to go for that. And then this is just like more super in-depth tutorials on how to use the profile. So we'll get back to that, but I think that's a question I'm not only curious about, but I want to know how to manage, because if that's what's actually gonna like be more optimal, then it's practical to avoid more functions, right? So yeah, I guess I'll just go for what I was intending here, and I'm just gonna go for what's called header hitbox component, right? And we're gonna make this public so that we have access to it. So it's gonna be public box collider, and then we're gonna call it box. So it's gonna compile right now. It is currently compiling, so there's an error. Box collider could not be found, so it might be capital B. If not, then we're gonna have to do a quick Google search or Bing search to, you know, figure out, hey, what is the actual object? So it is capital B. All right, box. And then I would do box.size. I don't remember what was the property of boxes, so we can definitely add that. It would be better, it would be optimal to actually check that before I do anything reckless, right? So box collider Unity API would give us a document called box collider, and this is what would describe what we're looking for. So we have size and we have sensor. These are the exact two properties that I want to manipulate, right? So size uses a vector 3, one for x, one for y, and one for z. And you can call it by saying collider.size equals new size. So that's going to be a static, that's going to be a set like, hey, this is exactly what we're going to look for. So I'm going to take that. But then center is also another vector 3. There's no coding example here, but at the same time it says here that the center of the box measured in the object's local space. So what I'm going to do, let's go for box size equals new vector 3. We're going to do new size x, new size. We're not worried about the y or the z in this case because we were only moving the x. So I'm just going to have a variable called n size x, right? That's going to be a float. And all we're saying is, hey, we're going to use a decimal number to describe what we're looking for here. So we save, we compile. Okay, and the one, so that's for size, right? Right now we're at 2. When we said, oh, let's go, I guess, like, let's say -3 and then size of 10. That makes sense. I would say that n size would now be 10 because that's going to represent all of that. And then for center, we're going to do -3, right? So I'm also going to do another float called, rather it's going to be vector, right? So no, okay, we can do float, right? We can do new center x. And we're going to do the exact same thing that we just did with the size, right? So we're going to copy and paste this. And instead of size, we're going to go for center because that's what the API said. And the value we're going to put is going to be center. Should work. So we're going to save, we're going to compile. So once you save and then you click Unity, you basically compile and then boom. So now I'm going to put -3 on this one because like I said, right now we are at center of 0.5 and then size of 2. When we enter, it should be center of -3, size of 10. So only one way to test that, right? We're going to go ahead and disable the box. It should reopen as we start. Okay, it's going to fail because we didn't assign a collider. So all we have to do is drag and drop the game object that has a collider, which is the self here, or literally grab this box collider and then drop it right here. It's the exact same thing. And then we can play again. So when I play and pause, right, we can see that here the hitbox is... Okay, I messed up on something because check this out. It automatically does that because it does detect something. So I noticed that I said, oh, when you touch something, do this. I did not consider, oh, what are we touching? We have to touch the player. So we have to keep it in this bracket. Because then when it touches the player, it does what it has to do. Also, I didn't consider the size of, rather the center of the Y value, right? So if I unplay, oh no, I think it just, my bad, it resorted to 0, right? So if we look at DodgeBox, and if I said, oh, 0Y and 0Z, we're not going to even have anything. So it should just stay as 1, from what I'm assuming. We can hard code these values. I'm not a fan of hard coded values. It's really good for memory management because then you don't have to communicate to a bunch of objects or like areas. So size is now going to be consistent with 1 and 1, and then center is going to be 0, 0. This should be fine. Again, in the scenario where it's like, hey, do some bullets have flexible hitboxes, right? How does that work? Then we will experiment with that and then just tweak those values. If anything, I would like to keep these values static. If anything, I would just like to remove this and say, oh, let's do 10 and then -3. The only reason why these have to be flexible right now, I mean, size doesn't have to be flexible, but the center has to be flexible because that's what's, because remember, some of them are going to use negative numbers and some of them are going to use positive. So the only way to assign that right now is by doing these public floats to manipulate those values. So right now we're at 2, 1, 1. So when I play, it should stay at 2, 1, 1. It absolutely does. And now when I enter the hitbox, which is when the bullet is literally right next to me right here, now it just expanded. So if I start moving to exactly the left with the bullet, I'm not getting any points. But then if I move out, I do get the point, and then I'm locked out from getting another point. So that's ideal. What I just realized though is you can technically really run away from the bullet. So for example, because we have a dash button, right? So if I say, okay, we're here, and then like I dash out, we do get the dodge point for that, but then again, we can't re-access it. Which I'm curious to think, is it possible that it's okay to get the dodge point by literally like leaving? But then the thing is like when you re-enter, can you get another dodge point by doing that? That's a design question that I need to optimize as quickly as possible because that is gonna cause some issues going forward. Also, I'm gonna change the soundtrack here in the background. Let's go for the other alternative is just to keep expanding the size. And so since we have the flexible um, values here, we can just kind of experiment with that, right? What if I said, oh, -10, and then I said 20 as size, or 22, 20, 24, 24 is good. Technically, yeah, I can like run away all the way over here. And what if I wanted a more extreme example, right? Let's say -100 and 240, or just 200, 204, 205. Yeah, I think that's a really extreme example. Could you technically outrun a bullet? And also, bullet speeds are typically faster than the actual player speed, so I think this is a really safe approach. And again, I know this looks kind of extreme, right? But these are kind of like the test cases that we end up creating anyway. So is it possible to outrun this? Maybe if there's a power up, maybe if we slow down time and if we have like the dash button enabled, yeah, you know. But even then, I don't think there's going to be that much space in the entire movable battlefield where you actually get to achieve that in one long line. What I will do, just for exaggeration purposes, is -200 and 400. I think that's genuinely like, unless there's like a modder that's watching this vlog right now, like, hey, I think I can outrun that, then good for you, honestly. Like, I would love to see that. I would love to see that. Yeah, so let's just try that out. And we're gonna have to test case this real quick, so we're gonna do size it to 0.5. So let's try that. And yeah, bullets can't be moving that slow, right? Okay, so I'm gonna run. I'm running for a while. Still running. Still running. And I dodged by doing that. So yeah, like I said, realistically, I don't think there's gonna be that many tiles for you to even run 400 plus speed, whatever. And bullets will be faster. Yeah, there's gonna be some slow bullets, and of course, but like, I'm comfortable with this. I don't think it's too much of an issue. So what I would do is grab the other positive one, which would be, if I'm not mistaken, this one, and do the exact same thing. We're gonna grab the collider box, put it here, center size of -200, or -200 is the center, and then 405 is the size. We're gonna rinse and repeat, but instead of -200 with this one, it should be 200. And then 405. Yep. And we are repeating the exact same variables yet again. Did we say 200? Yeah, positive 200, right? Yeah. Yeah, let me just reference this real quick. Yeah, we should be set. Okay, so now we have the test case for actual dodge points and jump points getting fixed. That's good news. So it's like, hey, you're in range. Got hit. Jump. Okay, that's another thing I didn't factor, but when you get hit, you are not allowed to get the dodge point. And I know that's not associated with the actual dodge logic here. Or at least I know I didn't plan on like writing that there. However, pretty sure there's got to be a function that says, hey, when you... Yeah, okay, so transfer damage. That's the function that's going to say, okay, you take damage, whatever. This has to stop any procedures for dodge points, right? So what I'm going to do... We're going to do a public bool. Again, public now just to keep in track of like what's going on. So public bool got hit, and we're gonna do got hit equals true. So when you take damage, you get hit. And then we're gonna do a quick condition that says if got hit equals true, or since it doesn't, because it's a true bool, you can just leave it that way, and then you're absolutely fine. When you do that, you can then say got hit, and then call return. And that means absolutely nothing is getting you. And that means that there's absolutely nothing that's going to continue. Like the whole script, like this function cannot continue until like you just lock it out basically. I know there's a lock function in C++, but you kind of want to think about it like that, but this is just more practical to say, hey, like we're done. No accessing this. So what I have to keep in mind is what if you get hit but you have like an invincibility item, this and that, right? So like I would 100% say to do add what was that one show? Add invincibility condition, right? So it's like don't like you can skip this entire part if you're invincible, because that's kind of how it works, right? So we compile, we shouldn't have any major issues. Okay, and then we can see, did we get hit? If so, are we going to get any logs, right? So just to test it out, we're going to make sure we are in range. So got hit. Yep, works exactly as intended. Super simple stuff. Okay. So we should be okay with that. Look how much progress we're making, right? Barely anything. I mean, these test cases are super important, and I know they're super minor stuff, but this is how you keep track of like the things that actually matter. And again, the dodge points are fundamental to the entire prototype. If you are a player that can dodge successfully, you will be rewarded for that. And that's why it's super critical to make sure that you have that aligned. Otherwise, if you don't have that, then yeah, it's not gonna work. I would say, oh yeah, just skip programming this part. But again, because it's that important, we need to have that. So we kind of talked about object pooling, right? This is something that we should probably work on next. What I want to know is what happens if we change the speed for a second, right? So we have logic here. We're going to do a public float test speed just to actually make sure that we can have something that, is controlled over here. We had negative 0.01, so let's do like negative 0.05. this cube right here. Oh, why don't we have a practice bullet hell session, right? What that means is we just take this object, duplicate it a bajillion times, right? Kind of give us some manual values, right? Not that it matters too much here. And then start playing around a bit. I made this song so long ago, you have no idea. If I just slide this a little more. Okay, random test, right? But how would a bullet hell look like? Well, let's figure it out. So we want to like just dodge. Okay, I got hit twice in that little scenario. I think we can go faster. And again, let's even duplicate this even more. Let's kind of mess around with some things here. Okay, so let's try another example. They're definitely not spaced out enough, but got hit 3 times. No, 6 times. Okay, interesting. So what if we scaled these, right? Into actual little bullets. Oops. And I can't move my controller. Okay. That was terrible. Let's go ahead and move it again. A little down here. Should give me enough time to... Alright. Should be able to shift into the other camera mode. There we go, and now I can kind of see properly. It's like, oh my gosh, 3D DodgeKing, what am I gonna do? Okay, so that's a hit. That's a game over. We're fired. I wonder if I just make it really slow, right? Would that make it more bearable? Actually, I didn't even think about it like this, but this is another perspective at the end of the day, so it's like, could jump here, nah. Could jump here, jump. Yeah, I can't have a super bullet hell like that. Like, this is an easier way to view it, but yeah, the 3D perspective's a little rough, so probably focus more on laser stuff. So here I do like a jump. Definitely a double jump. Right. Okay, you can even dash, remember. It's like, oh, look at all of that. Interesting. Actually, this is funny because like the flow of the gems in the last game kind of was like that. It was like really slow. If you got near them, it would start like magnetizing to you. I know once you hit the bullets, you're gonna disable that so that you don't hit the bullets multiple times, but technically here you can hit it multiple times. And I wonder if the performance is going crazy. Okay. We're hitting 15 frames per second every like I don't know, every 10, 15 seconds. It's not that hyper common, but at the same time, you don't want that to happen at all, right? Now we have like 200 frames per second, so it's like super smooth, right? I think what we have to focus on here, and then again, that's probably the rendering, because over here there's nothing, but then if I get back to the main stage, yeah, we're spiking a lot more. That's because we're rendering more 3D objects here in the background. So another thing to consider is just kind of having like fake backgrounds or something that looks like, yeah, it's 3D, but also like it's just probably a texture so that you have like it's pre-rendered, right? Because here each block is like each individual object, so it's not memory friendly at all. Then here we're super smooth. And yeah, we have a bunch of objects here, even with their own proper textures and such. But here you can see the game is running hyper smooth because that is a good question actually. Why is that the case? We have more objects here. Not that we do have more objects, right? But we do have like a large amount of objects and we're smooth. Each object has their own texture. We have an animation from the player. These objects have their own scripts, right? So how come all of that is lighter? And then when we go over here, performance wise, it says, oh, we're hitting 30 frames, we're hitting 15 frames, we're getting spikes. How is that possible when, again, all these objects over here do not have textures, they do not have scripts, they're literally just empty cubes. I might be wrong about the texture because we do have some slightly gray cubes, right? At the same time, like I said, there's less logic there attached to the tiles than, you know, what's here, which are the bullets. So that's something I'm interested in checking out because I need to figure out why that's the case. Because if I can have game performance at 200 frames per second the entire time, I mean that'd be insane. So I guess like another very cheap thing to do is we can just switch. We can go to the camera and literally switch like the skybox or something or the camera lighting. Right? If I, oh yeah, we might not even be using directional lighting at the moment. I gotta check that out. But that's interesting. I gotta look at that. But yeah, so we can do a little bullet hell test every now and then. It's pretty interesting. I'm gonna have to investigate this a little bit more. Yeah, so okay. I'm looking at the time, and even though it's slightly early, there is something that I do have to do here. So I will be excusing myself momentarily. I'll end the stream in a second. But the things of value that we learned, right, is performance is a little bit weird. We finally got the DodgeBox working the way that it's actually intended to work. We have some test case scenarios how we wrote down, basic programming on blocking, some test speed stuff, and yeah, just a really inquisitive approach of why, you know, how does Unity's memory system, like how do the scripts communicate? Is having more um functions and, you know, features like that logically, right? I would assume that would take more memory. But then you have to ask yourself, hey, if that's the case, right? If we truly have more functions, like if I had a function and then I had inside the function the actual thing that gets done, but then I put the thing that gets done in a place where the function is not called, are we calling more memory, less memory, almost the same? Is it a line of code that makes a difference? I gotta run that experiment. And it's very difficult to gauge that with the profiler since it manages everything that we see. So scripts, right? If I theoretically, if I wanted to run the look that we're doing 200 frames per second script wise, so scripts are not having any issue rendering or having any memory issues here. The biggest issue has to be the renderer, which is again why we have um Yeah, animations don't have issues. Yeah, rendering's gonna be. Well, it says it's fine, right? Look, it says it's at 100 frames per second to 200. We're not spiking that much. Um, but again, those cubes are like the tiles is interesting, right? Garbage collector doesn't have too many issues. Maybe it's a VSync actually. Hold on, VSync. No, okay. VSync doesn't say anything. Global illumination, UI, nothing. Others. It says others is what's causing the 60 frames per second, but what does others get defined as, right? And I'm gonna have to research this because I'm not hyper familiar with the profiler. I'm just aware that just be aware of this, right? But we see memory, right? So total use memory is 1 GB. Texture memory is what's the most expensive right now at 0.67 GB. Yeah, look at that. So it has to be. I don't know. That's so interesting. Mesh is at 300 kilobytes. Material at 82 kilobytes, right? Oh, okay. Object count is just how many objects are in the scene right now. 82 material count. 82 materials. Game compiler. I think GC is game compiler. That's something I gotta look at. But look, that's 21 megabytes. Okay. And then allocated in frame. It says B, right? Like I don't know if I'm tripping, but is that a bajillion? No, bits. Okay, bits. And then we even jump to kilobits. Oh yeah, so it's like that's not even the issue. Again, it's just really the textures are so heavy. That's insane. So I gotta find a way to compress textures while maintaining quality, right? But then also just making sure that that doesn't get in the way of slowing down the game. So we can automatically see that again, textures are the final boss, right? And total memory used. I think that's like a runtime. Is that a runtime thing? I want to check that out, right? So like if I start from scratch and then if I stop real quick, right? Total memory use. No, okay, so it's just what's being called at the moment. That's terrible. I think a gigabyte is like it's rough. That's a lot. We have audio, right? Total memory audio 67 megabytes. I'm not too opposed to that because we do have some heavy music here. We're not using them right now, interestingly enough. So I don't know what's being called audio wise. Yeah, so yeah, like this is me just making conclusions. I need to do the research. I need to read the API and figure out, hey, how does a profiler work? What causes this? What is that? But I can tell you right now that textures do play a pivotal role on what is super heavy. And yeah, so rendering and others, it's just texture stuff at the end of the day. So I gotta look into that. But okay, so for today's session, like I said, a couple of things that we were able to do. So I'll take a pause here because there are some things I have questions with, and I want to definitely check that out. But yeah, for anyone here, thank you so much for locking in the stream, joining, having fun with us here. Very much appreciate all of that. And actually, we had Dark Nemesis himself at the Giga Chat. He said, what do you think about Unity 6? Okay, so currently I'm using the older version. This should be Unity 5. And I think the biggest issue with Unity 6 is the fact that it's going to have that low-key runtime fee. It's been very pesky. It's a huge conversation within the game development community at the moment. So if you're using an older engine, you're not going to be affected by the runtime fee, right? So that's something that you have to be aware about going forward, because if you want to have all the cool qualities, especially loading up a game without having the Unity splash screen at the beginning, then yeah, Unity 6 and any updates going forward is probably for you. And realistically speaking, like with how it takes to market a game and actually start making like a bunch of money and such, runtime fees shouldn't be too much of a challenge. However, if you are a serious hobbyist or developer, or you want to take game development as a professional like career that you want to work on and everything, you genuinely want to make sure that you are a successful developer. So even if it sounds like, oh, what if my game sells 1 million copies? Is that realistic? Well, whether it's realistic or not, you have to always account to what is something you will be doing if you're consistent with your habits, with your consistency, with your ambitions and such. So scenario where you want to make a game that makes 1 million units, right? Of course you can do that. There's systems and goals in there in the whole world and online resources that can help you do that. Scenario where that happens, are you willing to pay the runtime fee when that occurs? It might be very ambitious to talk about it right now from a developer or a perspective that doesn't have much going forward with their current title or titles, right? But I am kind of taking a stance on taking a step back from Unity in general. I would not upgrade to Unity 6. I wouldn't upgrade in general. I'm currently using the 2021 version, if I'm not mistaken, or 2020. Yeah, 2021.3.21 F1 long term. I forgot the long term one. Uh, and I had this firewall notification the other day, which is a little fishy. It makes me think, maybe they're trying to, take older versions, and even though it's regressed and such, they kind of probably want to update it into these new frameworks that allow the runtime fee to come in. So, a little bit of a concern. Definitely wouldn't play too much with that. I heard Godot is an amazing open source engine that definitely has a bunch of potential. There's other game engines as well that anyone can try out. I'm only sticking to Unity for this project specifically because of the fact that I have some experience with it, and prototyping is relatively rapid in my experience here. So yeah, it might be like a comfortability thing, but long term, do I stick with Unity? Do I jump to another engine? Choices that truly come down to what are your financial goals, and more importantly, how you see yourself developing in this field of game development. So Giga Chad, Big W. Yeah, I'm not a fan. Not a big fan of Unity in general, even though that's the only one that I'm kind of focused on. So hopefully that answers your question here. And yeah, before I end the stream, is there anyone else that has a question or anything that we talked about? Just want to say thank you guys for actually showing up here, because I'm using this live stream format as a way to make a lot of clips, and I thought the first 2 episodes had some pretty valuable insights. I probably said a couple of things here that I probably want to clip here. And I would like to continue making development public and such. I don't have an issue doing that. But I do recognize that the more I yap, the more I talk, the more I explain my process and everything, that might be a little. It's good because it helps me practice like teaching, and it allows me to improve my communication skills with like what I'm doing on a technical level. At the same time, I don't know how much of a drawback that is for the actual like step-by-step phase of like, okay, I want to get this function done. Do I explain every line that I'm doing like I like I am in the stream, or do I take the time to just do it on my own and then retrospectively explain that, right? There's probably a more practical approach to go backwards and use a retrospective approach to this, which is why it's important to document everything at that point, because then it's just a matter of editing. But yeah, I'll try my best to continue explaining and working, trying to see if I can do that. I'm also a terrible multitasker, so I might be able to yap here and do some side programming, but I'm probably a little bit more efficient if I just kind of quiet down and just did everything on my own here. But I don't know. I'm here to experiment and I'm here to learn. And if you guys have any questions, or if you guys want to see me attempt to do something else, I'm more than willing to try that. So why not? Also, if you guys are interested in the soundtrack, you can join my newsletter, which should be in the description down below. And you literally get access to most likely, I believe it's this entire playlist, which is like full of songs that I've been making, and a little bit of spoiler content for some other games that I'm currently making, right? But it's never too bad to listen to new content, specifically music. And there's also a book available. There's also the ability for you to play test, become a beta tester. I even do key giveaways every now and then. Last time I did it was like a month ago, I think, and I actually never checked out if those keys got validated. So I don't know. If you guys are ever interested in trying out DodgeKing for free, there's definitely that. And who knows, maybe I shoot another project every now and then. So I also like to talk about my friends' developments. They have a bunch of friends that are in the game dev industry, and they are absolutely killing it. They're doing amazing things. So it'd be really hype to, kind of be like, hey, you wanna see what my friend's doing? So you never know. And yeah, I will continue to wrap up things momentarily. So I'll give you guys one last chance if you have anything else that you guys want to ask. But besides that, also I opened up this Unity, which is the another chance project. It's funny. Have it super ready just to copy and paste scripts that I need. But yeah, All right, cool. Then thank you guys for swinging by. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, comments, share. Today's sponsor is me. What's up? And yeah, make sure you hit that newsletter if you guys are interested in more stuff, right? And I give a lot of things for free, so if you that interests you, you know, if you like books, if you like webcomics, if you like soundtracks, if you like demos, 100% just let me know. All right. Anyway, talk to you guys soon.